They told you work from anywhere was freedom. No office, no boss breathing down your neck. Just you, your laptop, and the world. But what if the real trap isn't the office? It's the fact that you can never truly log off. When work follows you everywhere, freedom starts to feel like silent pressure. And most people don't realize it until it's too late. For years, work from anywhere has been marketed as the ultimate symbol of modern freedom. The image is powerful. A laptop open on a beach, coffee shops in different countries, flexible hours, no commute, no office politics, and complete control over your schedule. It feels like a direct upgrade from the traditional 9-to-5 life. And in many ways, it is. But beneath the surface of this dream lies a subtle and growing contradiction that few people openly discuss. The promise of location independence suggests autonomy. You are told that if you can work from anywhere, you're no longer confined. Geography no longer dictates your lifestyle. You can travel, relocate, or design your day however you choose. The idea sounds empowering because it removes visible constraints. But freedom is not simply the removal of physical boundaries. True freedom also requires psychological separation from work, financial stability, and control over your time. And this is where the illusion begins to form. When work becomes portable, it also becomes omnipresent. The same device that allows flexibility also eliminates natural stopping points. In a traditional office, work is tied to a location. You arrive, you perform your tasks, and you leave. Physical departure creates a mental boundary. With remote work, that boundary dissolves. Your office is your bedroom, your living room, the cafe, the airport lounge. There is no clear transition between professional and personal space. As a result, work can quietly expand into every corner of your day. Many remote workers report longer hours than they worked in traditional settings. Without clear time structures, tasks spill over. Emails are answered late at night. Messages are checked during dinner. Projects are revised on weekends. Because the laptop is always nearby, there's always the temptation to just fix one more thing. Over time, the flexibility that once felt liberating turns into an expectation of constant availability. There is also an economic layer to the trap. Companies often frame remote work as a benefit, but it can also reduce overhead costs for employers while shifting expenses onto employees. Home office setups, utilities, co-working memberships, travel costs for digital nomads, and inconsistent healthcare access are rarely highlighted in promotional narratives. Meanwhile, global hiring expands competition. When location is irrelevant, you are no longer competing with professionals in your city. You are competing with professionals across continents. Increased competition can compress wages and intensify performance pressure. The work from anywhere culture also subtly promotes productivity as identity. Social media amplifies images of individuals answering emails from mountain cabins or closing deals from tropical islands. These visuals blend leisure and labor in ways that blur priorities. Of separating work from life, many people begin integrating work into every life experience. Vacations become content opportunities. Travel becomes networking. Relaxation becomes conditional upon remaining reachable. Psychologically, constant connectivity affects focus and recovery. Deep work requires uninterrupted time, yet remote communication tools encourage rapid responses and continuous notifications. Slack messages, emails, video calls, and project management alerts fragment attention throughout the day. When the mind never fully detaches, true rest becomes rare. Chronic low-level stress accumulates, even if the environment appears relaxed. Another overlooked factor is social isolation. Offices, despite their flaws, provide spontaneous interaction. Remote work removes that default social structure. While some individuals thrive in solitude, others experience subtle loneliness that compounds over months. Professional relationships become transactional and scheduled rather than organic. Without intentional effort, networks weaken and collaboration can feel mechanical. Financial unpredictability adds further complexity, particularly for freelancers and contractors who embrace location independence. Income may fluctuate month to month. Benefits such as retirement contributions, paid leave, and insurance often require self-management. The dream of autonomy can mask the administrative and strategic responsibilities that come with independent work. Freedom requires discipline, planning, and resilience. Without these, it becomes fragile. None of this means remote work is inherently negative. It offers genuine advantages: reduced commuting time, geographic mobility, access to global opportunities, and flexibility for families. The trap emerges when flexibility is mistaken for freedom. Flexibility allows you to rearrange work. Freedom allows you to control it. If your workload is still overwhelming, your income unstable, and your mind constantly occupied, changing location does not change your level of autonomy. The core illusion is simple. Movement is confused with liberation. Sitting in a different country while answering the same relentless stream of messages does not necessarily equal independence. Working from a scenic view while feeling unable to disconnect is not the same as owning your time. The aesthetic of freedom can obscure the absence of it. As remote work continues to expand globally, understanding this distinction becomes essential. The goal should not merely be to work from anywhere. The goal should be to design work in a way that preserves energy, boundaries, and long-term security. Without those foundations, location independence can quietly evolve into location-dependent stress, where the scenery changes but the pressure remains. This is the beginning of the work from anywhere trap. It does not remove work from your life. It risks inserting it into every part of it. The greatest hidden shift in the work from anywhere era is not geographical, it is psychological. When work is no longer tied to a place, it begins attaching itself to your identity. In traditional work structures, time had edges. Even if imperfect, there was a rhythm. Morning commute, office hours, evening return. These rituals created separation. Remote work dissolves those rituals. The laptop opens and the day begins. The laptop closes, or sometimes doesn't, and the day blurs into night. Without physical transition, mental transition weakens. Technology accelerates this collapse of boundaries. Communication tools promise efficiency, but often produce interruption. Notifications arrive constantly. Email pings, Slack messages, calendar invites, collaborative documents requesting edits. The expectation of responsiveness grows quietly. Because everyone is reachable, everyone is expected to be reachable. And this expectation is rarely written explicitly in contracts. It is cultural, subtle, reinforced by behavior. When a colleague replies at 10 p.m., others feel pressure to do the same. When managers send early morning updates, employees begin checking messages before breakfast. Over time, availability becomes performance, speed becomes a metric. The one who responds fastest appears most committed. This is how flexible hours transform into extended hours. Many remote workers report starting earlier and finishing later than they did in physical offices. The logic feels harmless at first. Without commuting, you gain extra time. Without office distractions, you can work more efficiently. But reclaimed commuting hours often get reinvested into additional work rather than personal life. The workday stretches quietly, unnoticed, until fatigue becomes normal. There is also the paradox of autonomy. Remote work is marketed as self-directed, yet many roles become more heavily monitored through digital tracking systems. Productivity software logs activity. Meeting counts increase to maintain alignment. Output is measured more visibly. Ironically, physical distance can increase managerial oversight through data. This creates a subtle pressure to prove visibility. In offices, presence is obvious. Remotely, presence must be demonstrated. Status updates become frequent. Online indicators remain active. People hesitate to step away from their devices for fear of appearing disengaged. The psychological burden of proving productivity adds another layer of strain. The always-on culture also affects cognitive performance. The brain requires cycles of focus and recovery. Continuous partial attention, switching between tasks, responding to messages mid-project, checking notifications during deep work, reduces efficiency over time. It feels productive because activity is constant, but sustained attention suffers. Mental exhaustion accumulates even when physical exertion is low. Recovery becomes fragmented. Instead of fully disconnecting after work, many remote professionals scroll through industry news, respond to quick questions, or review tomorrow's agenda. The mind never enters full rest mode. Sleep quality declines, creativity diminishes, emotional resilience weakens. The irony is that remote work often increases responsibility while removing support structures. Without clear office norms, individuals must self-regulate schedules, enforce boundaries, and design workflows independently. For disciplined individuals, this can be empowering. For others, it becomes overwhelming. The absence of structure can lead to overcompensation, working harder to avoid falling behind. Another underappreciated factor is time zone complexity. Global teams promise opportunity, but they also stretch the workday. Meetings are scheduled early for one region, late for another. Someone is always adjusting. When collaboration spans continents, asynchronous communication grows, but so does the temptation to monitor conversations around the clock. The psychological cost extends beyond productivity. Identity begins merging with occupation. When your home doubles as your office and your phone doubles as your workstation, separation fades. You are no longer leaving work. Work is embedded within your living space. The environment meant for rest now carries professional associations. This blending can feel efficient, but it removes sanctuary. Without a clear boundary between professional obligations and personal space, stress follows you everywhere. A notification can shift your mood instantly. A message can interrupt dinner. A pending task can linger in your thoughts while you attempt to relax. The deeper issue is not remote work itself. It is the absence of intentional limits. Flexibility without boundaries invites expansion, and work by nature tends to expand into available space. The always-on state becomes normalized because it evolves gradually. You do not wake up one day trapped. You slowly increase responsiveness. You slowly extend hours. You slowly sacrifice recovery time. And because the setting appears comfortable, your home, a cafe, a scenic location, the strain feels less obvious. But strain does not require fluorescent lighting to exist. True freedom requires the ability to disconnect without fear. It requires work structures that respect rest. It requires boundaries that protect energy. Without these, location independence simply converts external constraints into internal ones. The second layer of the work from anywhere trap is this: when you can work anywhere, you risk working everywhere. And when you are reachable at all times, you are never fully free. The promise of working from anywhere is often framed as a financial upgrade. No commuting costs, no daily office lunches, no relocation limits. You can earn in one currency while living in another. You can choose lower cost cities. You can optimize geography for lifestyle and savings. On paper, it sounds like a strategic advantage, but the financial reality is more complex than the marketing. The first hidden trade-off is cost shifting. Traditional employment concentrates expenses within companies. Offices pay for space, equipment, utilities, and infrastructure. When work moves into homes and temporary locations, many of those costs migrate to individuals. Internet upgrades, ergonomic furniture, backup power solutions, co-working memberships, software subscriptions, travel expenses for meetups, and self-funded professional development become personal responsibilities. Individually, these costs may appear manageable. Collectively, they accumulate. What feels like flexibility can quietly reduce net income. The second trade-off is global wage competition. When companies hire remotely, they gain access to worldwide talent pools. This increases opportunity, but it also increases supply. If a task can be completed from anywhere, it can be outsourced to regions with lower living costs. While high-skilled professionals may command strong compensation, mid-level and entry-level roles often experience downward pricing pressure. Remote work expands access and intensifies competition simultaneously. Freelancers and contractors face an even sharper version of this dynamic. Platforms that connect global clients with remote workers operate on scale. Bidding systems often reward lower pricing. While top-tier specialists can differentiate themselves, many professionals find themselves competing in crowded marketplaces where margins shrink. Income volatility becomes the next hidden variable. Salaried remote employees may enjoy stability, but many location-independent workers rely on contract-based income. Projects fluctuate, clients churn, economic downturns reduce discretionary spending, affecting consulting, marketing, and creative services first. Without employer-sponsored benefits, individuals must self-manage retirement contributions, insurance, taxes, and emergency reserves. The romantic narrative rarely highlights this administrative complexity. Another financial pressure emerges from lifestyle inflation disguised as freedom. Digital nomad culture often promotes travel, experiences, and aesthetic living environments. Renting short-term apartments in desirable cities, frequent flights, visas, and premium co-working spaces add recurring expenses. The aesthetic of freedom becomes expensive to maintain. For some, the cost is justified by personal fulfillment. But without careful budgeting, the pursuit of flexibility can erode savings rates. Income may rise while long-term wealth accumulation stalls. Taxation adds another layer of complication. Working across borders introduces legal and regulatory considerations. Residency status, double taxation agreements, and reporting requirements can become complex quickly. Navigating these rules may require professional advice, increasing costs further. Ignoring them can lead to penalties. There's also the question of long-term career trajectory. Remote roles sometimes provide fewer promotion pathways than centralized corporate environments. Visibility within organizations may decrease when teams are fully distributed. Informal networking opportunities shrink. Career advancement can become slower or less predictable, impacting lifetime earnings. Ownership remains a critical differentiator. Employees who work remotely still depend on companies. Contractors depend on clients. If neither path includes equity, asset accumulation, or business ownership, income remains tied to continued labor. Location independence does not automatically translate into financial independence. This is the core financial misunderstanding within the work-from-anywhere narrative. Flexibility does not equal security. You may control your environment, but if your income depends on continuous output, constant availability, or unstable contracts, your financial foundation remains fragile. None of these trade-offs invalidate remote work. They simply require intentional planning. Building emergency funds, diversifying income streams, investing consistently, and developing high-value skills become essential safeguards. Freedom without financial structure is temporary. The real measure of success is not whether you can answer emails from a different country. It is whether your financial systems remain strong regardless of where you open your laptop. Without discipline, strategy, and long-term thinking, the financial side of location independence can quietly undermine the very autonomy it promises. By the time the financial trade-offs become visible, another cost has already been accumulating quietly: the psychological strain of portable work. The work-from-anywhere model promises flexibility and autonomy, but it also reshapes how the mind relates to effort, rest, identity, and meaning. Unlike financial pressures, psychological costs are subtle. They build slowly, often unnoticed, until fatigue feels permanent. One of the most significant shifts is the erosion of mental separation between roles. In traditional work environments, physical departure signals transition. You leave the building, and your brain begins shifting into personal mode. With portable work, that signal disappears. The same space hosts professional calls, private conversations, relaxation, and sleep. The brain receives mixed cues. It struggles to fully disengage. This constant overlap reduces psychological recovery. True rest requires detachment. When your phone holds both work emails and personal messages, every notification carries potential obligation. Even during leisure time, a part of your attention remains on standby. The nervous system stays mildly activated. Over weeks and months, this low-level activation becomes baseline. There is also a subtle identity shift. Remote work often requires self-direction, which can be empowering. But when performance metrics are digital and visible, self-worth can begin attaching to output. Productivity becomes proof of value. A slow day feels like personal failure rather than normal fluctuation. Because there are fewer external signals of progress, individuals may overcompensate by working longer hours to validate their contribution. Isolation amplifies these tendencies. In physical workplaces, colleagues provide feedback loops, casual reassurance, spontaneous recognition, shared frustrations. Remotely, feedback is structured and scheduled. Silence can feel ambiguous. A delayed reply might be harmless, but it can trigger doubt. Without social reinforcement, self-criticism grows louder. Portable work also distorts the perception of time. When days are not anchored by commuting, office rhythms, or social interactions, they can blend together. Weeks pass quickly. Boundaries between weekdays and weekends blur. Without intentional rituals, it becomes difficult to measure progress or feel closure at the end of a work cycle. Another psychological layer is the pressure to curate a lifestyle narrative. Remote work is often displayed publicly as aspirational. Images of laptops near scenic views or minimalist home offices create an expectation of balance and inspiration. When reality feels less glamorous, when deadlines pile up or motivation dips, individuals may experience quiet dissonance between appearance and internal state. This dissonance increases stress. It becomes harder to admit exhaustion when the lifestyle is framed as enviable. The narrative of freedom discourages acknowledging constraint. As a result, people endure strain privately. There's also cognitive fragmentation. Remote environments are filled with micro-distractions. Household responsibilities, deliveries, background noise, and digital notifications interrupt focus. While flexibility allows multitasking, multitasking reduces depth. Over time, constant task switching diminishes cognitive stamina. Deep thinking becomes harder. Creative work requires more effort. Sleep patterns may shift as well. Without strict start times, some people drift into irregular schedules. Late-night work sessions feel acceptable because the office is always accessible. But irregular sleep affects emotional regulation, decision-making, and long-term health. Perhaps the most overlooked psychological cost is uncertainty. Even salaried remote roles can feel less stable due to reduced physical presence and increased reliance on digital metrics. Contractors and freelancers experience this more intensely. When income fluctuates and projects vary, mental security weakens. Planning for the future becomes stressful rather than motivating. All of these pressures do not appear dramatic individually. They are incremental. A few extra hours here, a missed break there, slightly elevated stress, slightly reduced rest. But compounding works psychologically just as it does financially. Small strains accumulate. The solution is not abandoning portable work. It is designing safeguards. Clear start and end rituals. Physical spaces dedicated to work when possible. Notification limits, scheduled social interaction, regular financial planning, deliberate offline time. These practices restore boundaries that geography once provided automatically. The work from anywhere trap is not about location. It is about losing psychological anchors. When work becomes weightless in space, it can become heavy in the mind. True freedom requires more than mobility. It requires mental separation, emotional resilience, and structured recovery. Without these, portable work remains portable pressure, carried everywhere, even into moments meant for rest. By now, the illusion is clear. Work from anywhere was never just about geography. It was about control, about reclaiming time, about stepping outside rigid systems and designing a life that feels intentional. But without structure, freedom mutates. What was supposed to expand your life can quietly consume it. The first shift is understanding that mobility is not the same as autonomy. Being able to work from any location does not automatically mean you control your time. If deadlines, clients, or performance dashboards dictate your schedule, your location changes, but your dependence does not. Real autonomy is not measured in miles traveled. It's measured in how often you can disconnect without anxiety. The second shift is separating income from identity. Portable work often blurs who you are with what you produce. When your laptop becomes your livelihood, and your livelihood becomes your self-worth, rest begins to feel like risk. You hesitate to step away because stepping away feels like shrinking your value. But sustainable freedom requires detachment from constant output. Output is a tool, it is not your identity. Third, boundaries must become intentional. Traditional offices enforce them through architecture. Remote work requires you to build them psychologically. That means defined work hours, a closing ritual at the end of each day, clear expectations with clients or employers, financial buffers that reduce urgency. Without financial margin, flexibility turns fragile. Every unexpected expense becomes panic. Every slow month becomes existential. True freedom needs a runway, savings, diversified income, or at minimum, predictable budgeting. Otherwise, you're just traveling without safety nets. There's also a lifestyle audit that most people avoid. Why did you want this freedom? Was it to travel constantly, to spend more time with family, to reduce stress, to pursue creative work? Many people adopt the work from anywhere model without defining what it is meant to serve. The result is mobility without direction. Freedom without clarity creates drift. Clarity creates alignment. When you define what freedom means personally, fewer hours, deeper work, geographic mobility, financial independence, you can design systems around that definition. Without it, you default to industry norms, client demands, or algorithmic expectations. Another key element is rhythm. Human beings thrive on rhythm, cycles of effort and recovery. Portable work disrupts natural rhythms because it removes physical transitions. Rebuilding rhythm requires intentional pauses, weekly digital detox blocks, quarterly reflection periods. Even small daily transitions like a walk before and after work can restore psychological separation. Freedom is not the absence of structure, it is the right structure. Finally, community becomes essential. Isolation is one of the most underestimated risks of remote work. Without shared physical spaces, you must actively seek collaboration, peer networks, and social reinforcement. Community provides perspective. It normalizes challenges. It reduces the silent pressure to perform endlessly. The trap was never the laptop. It was the belief that mobility alone equals liberation. True freedom is layered. It includes financial stability, emotional boundaries, social connection, and mental recovery. It allows you to close the screen without fear. It gives you space to think long-term rather than react short-term. The work from anywhere model is powerful. It can open doors that traditional systems never allowed, but only when designed intentionally. Otherwise, it becomes invisible over time. Hours expanding quietly, stress compounding slowly, identity narrowing around output. Freedom should feel expansive, not exhausting. So redefine it, not as constant availability, not as aesthetic productivity, not as digital hustle across time zones. Define it as control over your energy, control over your pace, control over when you are reachable and when you are fully present elsewhere. Mobility is a tool, structure is a safeguard, clarity is protection. And true freedom is not about being able to work from anywhere. It's about being able to live fully, without work following you everywhere.